My name is Terry Lynch. I'm with Oregon Mythology. I found myself searching for a passageway one day. And that passageway leads right across the complete section of the Cascades, which I'm sitting in front of at the moment. On top of Blind Peak. I want to make sure that everybody sees the type of things that we find in the process of research for mythology. I have located a couple that's sitting here on the top of Blind Peak. She's facing south. He's facing north.
The Middle, Cascadia Guides, a Let's production, in conjunction with Alien Strand Films.
Alien Strand Podcast.
Because everything, the whole power is going over the consciousness and through the consciousness, not over the spirit. The spirit is only the energy who gives the life. And what you are doing with your mind, with your thinking, that's all made out of your consciousness. That's the very important point what has the human being. With them he works everything. He builds up everything or he breaks everything with it.
So the species who abducted me are called the tall whites, okay? Well, I mean, they're extremely tall, so I would say like, 8.5 feet tall, very skinny, very lanky, and extremely white, just like my shirt. And some of them have like dangly, like pockets of hair, which is kind of funny, and then, and it's white hair, and then they have like tiny little beady red eyes. And they're only here on planet Earth for technology transfer, okay? So these are the species that are directly in communication with the US government for technology transfer. So they don't care about humanity's awakening. They don't care about what's really going on. They don't have any compassion towards humanity at all.
Leads people to think that travelling back in time cannot occur in our universe is the grandfather paradox. This is a well-known paradox of time travel, in which inconsistencies emerge through changing the past. The name comes from the paradox's description. A person travels to the past and kills their own grandfather before the conception of their father or mother, which prevents the time traveller's existence.
Alien Strand Podcast.
Welcome to this episode of Alien Strand Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Ledesma. Welcome to today's show. Yeah, we're just doing the audio today. We're not doing the video podcast today. I feel like getting some stories out to you guys because, sometimes you got to go, like I told you guys before, you got to go back to the roots. We got to tell everybody, what happened in the past, things that have happened, and just... Man, it's just, you have to talk about it. You have to, man. It's one of those things. But before we get going, welcome to Alien Strand Podcast. We're on 26 to 28 platforms. We are live right now. On Spreaker. I believe we're live on Spotify as well. So if you're catching us there, thank you guys for tuning in. I've been kind of like busy. I've been a busybody, you know what I mean? I just been doing all kinds of things on my, on my my new channel, man. Now, I'm going to break this to you guys. I just made a brand new on-demand channel. It's web-based only, okay? So it's only on web right now. You can find it on Facebook. So if you go to, the channel is called the Skylight channel. Skylight channel, right? So if you go to Facebook, go look for the Skylight channel, right? And you'll see like a guy kind of floating up inside of a UFO. So, and it's all blue, so you'll be able to check that out. It's got a blue TV as a logo. You'll see it there. So go check it out. Now, the reason I did this because the Alien Strand, the film, the middle part 2, it's taking the film platform that I use. They're got a lot of things going on, and they made a lot of changes, so they've been delayed longer and longer. So now it went from 4 weeks, it went from 8 weeks, and it went from freaking 12 weeks now, you know. And I'm like, man, I wanted you guys to see this film, right? Because I'm going to have the other one coming out pretty soon too, the middle part 3, right? So I said, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and build a channel, which I did, and you're able to, and I was able to put the middle part 2 on there, right? So right now you got the middle part 1 is on there, you got the middle part 2 is on that platform, you got Skinny Bob Chronicles is on there, you got the making of the middle on that platform, and you got the hide that's on that platform. So I'm getting movies. I'm gonna try to get 1 or 2 a week of new filmmakers. And maybe they can get their stuff on there. You know, I like to showcase people's films, man, because, you know, I'm a filmmaker, and I love to do that myself, you know. What's not to like about doing that and sharing other people's, you know, stories, right? Because that's what their films are about, you know. They're storytellers, right? And just like what I do. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make this channel, and I'm going to go and put it out there, right, for you guys to check out. Now, tonight, after tonight's podcast, we're live right now, but after we finish, I'm going to put a link to the Skylight channel there so you can go check it out. Now, as I get these channels and as more films are going to be coming in, I'm going to try to build a big, large things of disclosure. So you're going to see UFO stuff on there. You're going to see paranormal stuff on there. You're going to see Bigfoot stuff on there. You're going to see all different kinds of, conspiracy theory stuff too. It's going to have all kinds of information, right? A lot of it's going to be a lot more disclosure than anything else, but we're going to try to get as many films as we can on that platform. So if you guys go check it out, it's called Skylight, all right? And it's on right now. It's only on Facebook, and then if you click the link there off of Facebook, you'll be able to. It'll take you right to the channel. After we get a pretty good subscriber base on there, we're going to throw it on Roku, all right? So you guys are able to see the actual thing on Roku. So as of right now, you can actually watch it through your phone. You can actually mirror it from your phone to your Roku, and Roku TV or whatever TV you have or mirror kind of device you can want to. So you can download, you can purchase the movies, the middle part 1, part 2, or you can just rent them, and you're able to rent them for 3 days, man. So when you rent it, it's 3 days. Now we have an all access there, so it's $3.99. You want to be a subscriber to that? It's only $3.99. Now this is the good thing about this, right? I'm gonna have the middle part 3 gonna be coming out really, really soon, right? So when that movie comes out, it's going to be on that platform first, right? So if you have the subscription for $3.99, that's all you're going to pay, man. And you're going to be able to see part 1, part 2, and part 3 without having to pay anything extra or anything like that, right? Because you're already a subscriber. So, and that's the good thing about having the subscription overall, right? You're able to, and this is $3.99 a month, right? So, if it takes a month or 2 months, and then we're going to get another film after that. So, and we're going to keep on putting films on that platform. And it's a great thing for disclosure, right? And this is what that channel is about. It's about for disclosure and helping you guys out to, if you're looking for the truth and if you're into ufology, it's going to have a lot of teaching platforms on there as well. Now, I hope you guys caught our past podcast. If you can, go to our YouTube page. We've been doing live things there, a lot of live video YouTube. So a lot of my podcasts lately, I guess the last 10 or so, have been live, right? And you're not able to see the things that I'm actually talking about. On the live, I'm showing you a lot of diagrams, a lot of photos, a lot of videos that you're able to see. Now, the last one was on Bigfoot. Man, it was some incredible footage on there. Now, if you listen to it, the podcast only, you were able to. I did put the YouTube link on there as well. So even if you don't go, if you just go to Alien Strand there on YouTube, right? And then there's a little tab there that says live. Click that live tab because that's going to take you to the live video feed. Don't do the other ones because the other ones are just going to be audio. All right. So because we have audio, video, and then it kind of gets confusing a little bit. But go to the live tab there. Click the live tab, and then those are going to be all the video live podcasts that you guys have been listening to here on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and those are going to have all the videos and things that you can kind of blend in with, right? Because that's what it's about. Now, today I wanted to get a little deep and go back in time, if you will, a little bit and just kind of reflect on. Because a few podcasts back, I did talk about the creation of man, right? Or how, in the past history books where it was like the Book of Enoch, it was like all these books, for the Sumerian gods, all those, those religious backgrounds, right? And they wrote them all in books and everything like that about the creation of man, right? And how everything started. So why not talk about, this other one, which is the Egyptian, right? And their gods and because I think they have like over 200 or maybe not, maybe more than that gods, because they had a god for everything, a personality, they had a god for this, they had a god for that, and they also had almost like the gods of creation, if you will, right? And theirs was a very metaphoric. So everything that they did was metaphoric, and they were able to put it all on their clay tablets to where the Egyptian hieroglyphs where we're able to understand now, right? After they were able to, understand the scribe that was on there, right? And of course it took a few years to figure it out, but they finally did it, right? And we started getting all these stories of these Egyptian gods, things of who they were and what their because each one of these gods had stories as well on themselves, right? And these gods, they were just myths, right? And they said that they had like pyramid texts, right? And, they had writings on the walls, decorations, they were dating back to the Old Kingdom, which is like 2700 through 2200 BCE, right? So that's way back, right? And they wrote a lot of these things so that way you were able to know their history. Hey, does that ring a bell? Hello? We're trying to write and things inscribed, and we end up destroying them, Unfortunately, fortunately for the Egyptians, theirs were preserved, right? And we were able to know their history because of this. This was what, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, and how would he have never known if somebody destroyed their literature, right? Or anything like that. And I know it happened a few places back, to where they were actually destroying a lot of these statues, these tablets, things like that. And that's just human beings, right? Because we put things in a different perspective. Sometimes we want you to believe what we want you to believe, and it gets this anger factor comes in. But we're not talking about that anyway. So back in the day, these myths that they had, that they were. There were a lot of it was religious, and it was their religion. This is the ancient Egyptians had many creator gods and associated legends. And so they say this is how Egypt was created, right? By the diverse ways of different parts of ancient Egypt. Some verses of myth indicate spitting, others in the act of creation, right? The earliest god is Ra, or Atum, both being the creator or sun gods, right? And they emerged from a catatonic state of the world. And they gave the rise to Shu, which is air, and Tefnut, which is moisture. And then these unions came Geb, which is earth, Nut, which is the sky, who turned created Osiris, Isis, and Set, and Nephthys. So it was an extension of basic framework was the Osiris myth involving Osiris, his consort Isis, and their son Horus. The murder of Osiris by Set and the resulting struggle of power won by Horus provided a powerful narrative thinking of the ancient Egyptian ideology of the kingship with the creation of the cosmos. Wow. So this was their beliefs of the creation of all, right, or man. Of course, Ra and Atum, and these were the sun gods, right? So of course you can't live without the sun. You have to have that. So of course they're gonna put these in their stories. And the gods, it's like a pyramid. It starts from the top and it works its way down as far as the, who's the strongest, and all the way down to the bottom. Now, there was one called Hermopolis, right? The creation myth propagated from in the city of Hermopolis, right? Focused on the nature of the universe before the creation of the world. The inherited quantities of primeval waters were represented by the set of 8 gods called Odgodod. The goddess Nunut and her male counterpart Nu represented this stagnant prevail of the water itself. Hu and the counterpart Huhet represented the water's infinite extent. Kek and Kukwet personified the darkness present within it, and Amunet, represents the hidden and unknowable nature in the contrast of tangible world of living. According to the myth, the 8 gods were originally divided into male and female groups. They were symbolically depicted as aquatic creatures because they dwelt within the water. The males represented as frogs, and the females were represented as snakes. The 2 groups eventually converged, resulting in a great upheaval, which produced a pyramidal mound. From it, the sun, which rose into the sky to light the world. So that's another story, right, of how their Egyptian cultures believed, of the water, because without life, without the sun, without the water, you don't have life, right? And of air, of course. So this is how, they made sense of it all. In the beginning of man or human, really, in reality, it's human, right? That's how it's supposed to be, because human is interpreted as male or female. So it's all the same, right? What they're talking about. So this was the beginning of time back in the day, and they just had so many representations of, religious beliefs of these gods. Everything was a part of God, right? There was one called Thebes, right? It claimed from that Amun, right? Which was not merely a member of Ogadot, but the hidden force behind things, right? So these were like creation of Anun, and it was like, which they actually go kind of deeper than the underworld, right? So and they were trying to put these stories together of how, the beginning of time, the beginning of man, the beginning of everything, right? So Ra was the number one person that they were trying to, sun god. It was of it all, really, in reality. And then there was Horus, right? Which is the one that most people usually know about. Horus served many functions, most notably as a god of kingship, healing, protection, the sun and the sky. He was worshipped from at least the late prehistoric Egypt to the Ptolemaic Kingdom and the Roman Egypt. Different forms of Horus are recorded in history, and these are treated as distinct gods from Egyptologists, right? So the earliest recorded form of Horus is in the Upper Egypt, who is the first known national god, specifically related, ruling to the pharaoh who was the time came as regarded as manifestation of Horus in life and Osiris in death. The most commonly encountered family relationship describes Horus as the son of Isis and Osiris, and he plays key role in the myths as Osiris and the heir to the rival to Set. The murder of a brother of Osiris is another tradition. Hathor is regarded as his mother and sometimes his wife. Kind of strange, right? I mean, did you know that a lot of the Egyptian gods, the pharaohs, I'm sure you've seen it before, but they would marry within each other in the family, right? In other words, a brother would marry a sister marry a brother, or so on and so forth, because they wanted to keep the bloodline as as royal as possible, right, for them. And that's why they was insistent that they always had a son, back in the day. And it's strange as it sounds, it's kind of, I don't know if you could do that, that's just the way it was back then. They kept their bloodline sacred and they kept it pure, right? That's what they thought. Everything was pure. But as we know, and science now these days, that you can't really do that because it causes problems with the fetuses, the babies, things happen to the two children after a while. The bloodlines, when they mix like that, it just doesn't make anything right? Unfortunately, and they did this for thousands of years, man. Yeah, they just kept that part going. And they always believed in a lot of these gods to keep them in it's like it was their religion. Everything was the sun, the sky, the ground, the earth, And what do we see that most of the time, and it's in everything, really, in reality. If you think about it, you have the natives, back in the day, it's still the sun, the earth, Mother Earth, the ground, the water, everything, right? The wind. And not that they have gods, but it's just like it's like all humanity, even now, still kind of think the same way, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, because it's just like I always say. I even say to my podcast, or even in my posts, it doesn't matter who you believe in or what you believe in, as long as it's good and as long as it keeps you good and it gives you a good heart, right? And it's one of those things that we've been doing for thousands and thousands of years, man. And the Egyptians, they've had their stories, and there's one tale I'm going to tell you real quick before I it says, in one tale, Horus is born to the goddess of Isis after she's retrieved and all the dismembered body parts of her murdered husband Osiris, except his penis, which was thrown into the Nile and eaten by a catfish. Sometimes depicted instead by a crab, or according to Plutarch's account of her magic powers to resurrect Osiris, and the fashion is Phallus, to conceive her son. In other words, she was just kind of hoping that she could have that to conceive another son, right? An older Egyptian accounts have the penis of Osiris surviving, right? So in other words, to make another god. According to after becoming pregnant with Horus, Isis fled to the Nile Delta in the marshlands to hide from her brother Set, who jealously killed Osiris, and who she knew would want to kill their son. There Isis bore a divine son, Horus, a birth, a death, and a rebirth to recurrent themes in Egyptian lore and cosmology. It's not particularly strange that Horus also is the brother of Osiris and Isis by Nut Geb, together with Nephthys and Set. The elder Horus is called Herur, an opposite to Harpurterd. The younger Horus, at some point adopted by the Greeks as Harpocrates. So, another strange story, right, of their mythology. And if you were looking at a pyramid style, or let's just say a tree of life, or how you have your ancestors' tree, and it starts from the very top. The top would be Ra, right? The god of the sun. Then lower from him would be Tefut. Then next to him would be Shu. Then Geb. Then Nut. By Geb and Nut was Isis, Osiris, Nephthys, and then Set. Then came Horus, then Hathor. So that's the pyramid, if you kind of think about it, all the way down, of their gods and who they were. It's almost like a story of like incest and jealousy and hate for each other, right? Because one wanted another. One gets killed. another looks for him to come back so she can have more like him, right? And it seems to me like that story of the gods was a more humanistic story of what was possibly happening back in their time, right? I mean, it was happening. Even after that, it was like it was repeating itself. Stories and stories of hate. They were killing off pharaohs. They were poisoning pharaohs. They were marrying brother and sisters, you know, to keep the Egyptian bloodline of the pharaohs going, right? And there's a lot of stories like that in the ancient Judeo-Christian Bible as well, right? So a lot of these stories are almost similar to these stories of Egypt, right? And of course, they were around during that same period of time. But it's strange how a lot of these stories coincide with each other in a way to the where they're almost identical. Almost. But in the ancient Egyptian scribe, it seems a little more dramatic, right? Very dramatic. And that's pretty much how I'm looking at this, right? When I'm reading a lot of this stories to you of these gods and who they were and how it all started, right? So have you ever seen the image of what looks like the eye of Horus, right? It looks like an eye, but we've kind of put it together with the pineal gland inside the brain, how it looks exactly like that image that the Egyptians inscribed in their tablets and in the walls, the eye of Horus. So to them, it's a symbol of protection, of royal power to the deities, right? In the case of Ra, right? So the symbol of Horus' mother, Isis, and the deities associated with her. In the Egyptian language, for the word of the symbol was Wejat. It was the eye of one of the earliest Egyptian deities, Wajet, who later became associated with Bastet, Mut, and Hathor. Wajet was a solar deity, and his symbol began as her all-seeing eye, right? In the earlier artwork. Hathor is also depicted with this eye. Funerary amulets were often made in the shape of the eye of Horus. The Wijat, or the eye of Horus, is the central element of seven, which is gold, faience, carnelian, and lapis, and lazuli. Bracelets found on the mummy. The Wijat was intended to protect the king here and in the afterlife, and to ward off evil. Egyptian and Near Eastern sailors would frequently paint the symbol on the bow of their vessel to ensure safe sea travel. Horus was also thought to protect the sky. So that's why you always saw these bracelets on these Egyptian pharaohs, well, the ones they dug up, and they would find these bracelets, and it would have the Eye of Horus on there. It was a protective symbol, right? That they used, and they would carry it on them every day. So if you ever wondered about those bracelets and the Eye of Ra, that was it, right? And the Eye of Horus. That painting was actually depicted in the Eye of Horus was inside of a tomb in Peshidu in the 13th century BC. So they found that in there as well. This was well after, right? 13th century, that's way after. And they found that exact symbol inside of that tomb. It's actually a beautiful painting. You know, and that's what always gets me to wonder sometimes, and I have to go back and think and read a lot of their literature, because you always learn something about their culture back in the day. You know, there was all kinds. They said that the actual Great Sphinx had got its inspiration from this. From Harem Akhet. It's Horus in the horizon, right? Is represented in the dawn of the early morning sun. He was often depicted as a sphinx with the head of a man, like the great sphinx of Giza, right? And the creature with a lion's body, of a falcon head, wings, sometimes with the head of a lion or ram. They're later providing the link to the god Khepri, the rising sun. It is believed that he was the inspiration for the Great Sphinx of Giza, constructed under the order of Khafre, whose head it depicts. So that they, constructed the whole Sphinx because of the idea of Horus, right? It was Horus in the horizon. That's why when you see it, it's always facing the sun in the mornings. As fantastic as it is to look at these things, you always wondered of the idea and what made them build something like that and why. But now you know. And it's just so many wonders of the world that we always try to understand exactly how, why, what, why, why they did that, why this culture even existed and how did it even start, right? Makes you wonder even how they built the pyramids. I mean, people still speculate on that. How these huge tons of block were cut out of side of mountains and they were brought and shipped all over there and made this pyramid, right? Makes you wonder why or how. I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it a couple of times. I've even seen a couple of people, have their kind of stated what I have stated. I feel like these pyramids have been there a long, long time, even before the Egyptian people showed up there. Now, I know that's just my personal opinion. And their thoughts of it, it was, they said it served as a tomb for Khufu, right? And this pyramid stands at 481 feet tall. That's pretty tall. And that's the tallest Great Pyramid in the world, man-made, right? And it has stood over 3,800 years old. They said that it has at least 2.3 million large blocks weighing 6 million tons in total, right? Just for a tomb? But the outside layers, okay? So these are the outside layers. If you kind of think about this just for a minute, the outside layers are just bound together by mortar and limestone. So it was kind of like the glue that kind of kept the blocks together, right? Of course, the weight of them themselves were just enough, right? But it's like us when we build homes and, we put mortar around homes. Just that nice, smooth texture look, right? And that's probably how it looked back in the day. With limestone, it's going to be white and it's going to reflect. It's going to glow. Most people in the ufology community or different unknown communities always trying to understand why this pyramid was made. What was it made for? A lot of them saying it was a battery, some kind of energy field. It still shows signs of electronic magnetic fields around it. All around it. On some, they even found mercury, liquid mercury. Pools of liquid mercury. It's strange how, I don't know if you've seen, there's a video of this person has a tub of liquid mercury, right? And they get this iron, this huge piece of iron that these men used to shape, horseshoes, things like that. It's heavy, and they put it on top of that mercury, and it starts to float, right? It's floating on top of that mercury. Kind of gets you wondering a little bit about that as well. Why that was there. And that was just their culture at the time. They were fixated, fascinated with the gods. Now, have you ever noticed that inside the pyramid there is no markings anywhere? Just on the outside surface. Or in the temples. Or on like the Sphinx, things like that. All those have markings and stories, but not inside the pyramid. Why? It's my thing, right? You'd figure that thing would have graffiti all the way inside of there of all the stories and hieroglyphs. Why not put it in there? That's the biggest structure they had, which is still around and still preserving their history, right? They were able to learn about the kings, the queens, the priests, the pharaohs. It's kind of strange how they've put a lot of this together just by figuring that out, right? And I'm glad they did, and I'm glad they were able to get this information out as much as possible to us that kind of like want to know, right? So if you want to know how they got these dates, it was called radiocarbon dating, right? So the mortar was radiocarbon dated. They took about 46 samples of the mortar, was taken in 1984 and 1995 to make sure that they clearly inherit the original structure, and they have been incorporated at a later date. The results calibrated from 2871 through 2604 BC. So this is when they put the actual mortar on top of the pyramid. So they were able to go back a few more hundred years because of some wood that they found, and it gave it an extra 300 years offset. So if you go back 300 years more, it's going to be 2620 and 2484 BC, right? And this is what they got from carbon dating. I always thought about that, right? How did you know? How did the carbon dating know? I always wondered about that myself. I might not be very scientifically, smart on things like that, but on how they carbon date things. And I'm sure there's calculations, equations to put all these things together to where they can figure out exactly or pinpoint kind of close on carbon dating. If you notice, I don't know, I spoke about this before. A lot of this carbon dating, it used to be only 2000, 3000 BC, BCE. Now, a lot of articles that I've been reading, it's 10,000, 15,000, They're finding things at, 300,000 years back. And just gets you wondering what's beneath the surface, right? What got covered with the Younger and Dryas event, right? 12,000 years ago, or 13,000. when we talked about our guests when they had that asteroid impact. It changed everything, right? And a lot of things got buried.